I'm 47 years old and I've lived in this town for 47 years, and for 47 years I've had an issue with this platform right here. This is what Andover looks like now, and this is what Andover used to look like. And I'm not about to get all rose tinted glasses on you about old railways and pre-beaching. We used to have a lot more and now we don't. But come and have a look at this. So as a 47-year-old, I've never seen this platform used in a formal capacity, a passenger carrying capacity. And that's okay, because plenty of others around the country could probably claim the same. But this is very different. You see, Platform 3 used to see passengers in from the North Line that ultimately went up to the Midlands. Classic beaching abandoned railway. But a stretch of this old abandoned line remained and still does today, maybe 6 or so miles, because it connected the MOD land of Silbury Plain to the main rail network. Well, now we have two significant aspects to this story. First of all, we have two hugely growing towns at the end of this line.
The game changer now, which makes this really important. Government have increased the number of houses which Test Valley Borough Council have to build, and also Wiltshire.
And with that, a whole bunch of traffic coming in from those towns, even now, trying to find a space in this car park for the station. And
that could result in, say, 5,000 or 6,000 extra houses just on the route of the railway.
Oh, add to that the MOD, they rarely use that line. In fact, in the last decade or so, I only remember a handful of times that they have. I think the Network Rail Track testing train uses it more regularly, along with the odd rail charter here and there. This seems like the biggest transport no-brainer that ever existed. This seems like an easy win for every invested party locally.
The local people really want to make it happen. They can start to make it happen.
A railway company, politicians, local residents, green energy campaigners, the local council, local businesses, you name it. Why hasn't this happened already? How easy is it to just open a railway? Railways are great, we should be able to do this. Can I just start a campaign? What trains do we need? What infrastructure needs to be added? This is the journey I'm really excited to go on, because it offers nothing but value for everyone, every stakeholder possible. And if we fail, because we have failed before...
For me, so this isn't a new idea to reopen the railway line. Many people have tried it.
Could we do something else? Could we do something else that's of value to the community? Maybe a heritage line.
They're not just a heritage railway. They're a living museum, a chance to look at a snapshot of life that has gone, to understand more about how people lived in the past, and to keep that heritage alive.
Imagine what that would bring for the local community, the value it would bring, the jobs, the experience, the volunteer opportunities, just proper wholesome stuff. Buckle up, this could be a fun journey.
We're on a train.
So I started my journey behind a desk. You see, the yard and the line immediately behind Platform 3 had already been done up, completely revitalised within the last couple of years. Maybe there was already a plan in place I knew nothing about. It didn't take long. An advert from Network Rail suggesting that this yard to the rear of the station was actually for rent. The entire rear of Andover Station. So I cooked up a heartfelt email. I do have a pie-in-the-sky notion that one day this platforming yard could be utilised for social purpose, either in the form of a heritage railway to Ludgershall, or of course an actual passenger light rail. So the initial question is, would this proposal be of interest to Network Rail on the basis either in the form of a heritage railway or in the form of a bona fide green credential railway? That Network Rail would then sort of look up and see the potential for the income and of course the potential for the social benefit. Within 4 minutes I had a reply. Sorry Paul, this site is for rail operators only. Okay, swift and appreciated reply. Perhaps also a reality check for me. This railway stuff isn't as easy as I first anticipated. I think we might need some help.
Yes, hi, my name's Chris Donnelly. I'm the Hampshire County Councillor for the Andover West Division, which runs from the town of Andover itself all the way up to the border of Wiltshire, just before Ludgershall.
So perhaps we could do with some political clout here. This is Chris Donnelly, a local councillor, and I wonder what he could bring to this party.
So I've always been interested in transport and travel. I'm also quite interested in history and local history, and so I've been involved with the Waverley Route Heritage Association, whose aim is to preserve the history of the railways and the borders. A lot of my time is spent doing that, purely as pleasure, and knowing the effort of even laying a mile of track it's incredible. It's expensive and it's heavy. And the two things that I've learned about railways.
So if you'd have been on a train heading out of this tunnel in this direction, you'd soon arrive in Marlborough. This line was the Midlands and South Western Junction Railway, connected Andover up through here, Marlborough, Swindon, on to Cheltenham, and of course further in either direction with more connections. It really was the missing link, that north-south line that we all love and would desire right now.
Really, we're at the point now where you have a road which is going to struggle to cope, but you've also got the housing density which makes a railway practical, and also the opportunity for Hampshire County Council and Wiltshire Council to come together and say, actually, this is a project which we want to ensure the developers contribute towards.
In fact, you can probably blame this railway and tunnel there for sort of getting me into making videos in the first place. So I was fascinated by this landscape, sort of the effect that humans had on geography and how they used the landscape to make their mark on it for whatever reason. This line was built alongside an earlier GWR railway and ran parallel for 5 miles and tells such a great story of how things don't really change. Those two companies built to compete and built for profit. They weren't in it for the benefit of society.
And we can't be naive. It takes years to reopen railways. Everyone accepts that. What I would like is an agreement with Hampshire and Wiltshire to come together to say this is something that needs to be in our local plan and is an essential part of our infrastructure. And the problem at the moment is that Hampshire sits in the southeast and Wiltshire sits in the southwest. So you have a southeast transport strategy and a southwest, and this line goes over the two.
So this railway, like many others and all others probably at the time, well, they had to pay, they had to be profitable ventures for them to be any kind of success. I don't think the person was ever considered, the person was just a commodity. And I still think today we have very much that attitude, the railways must pay, they're not a social service.
The system is almost set up to prevent it. We have a very can't-do attitude when it comes to public transport, and I always say, we don't ask for the roads to pay for themselves. We subsidise the local buses. We don't ask the police or the NHS, the fire brigade to pay for themselves. I regard railways as an essential piece of transport infrastructure. I don't know, a naive or old-fashioned view, but it's one that I sincerely hold. And you know, if we're going to have these thousands of houses all the way up there, then we can't just plug it onto the existing infrastructure and expect it to cope, because it won't.
So I really feel like this guy's talking some sense. There is no political axe here to grind. This isn't politically motivated. This chap's a railway man and you can see how it would benefit everybody involved. This is a no-brainer. Okay, I don't want to dwell on the past too much. I've seen some real lame excuses as to why this line wasn't opened in the past.
The beauty of this line is that it's self-contained. Yes, there are points to take trains onto it, of course, but it has its own platform at Andover. It doesn't interfere in the West of England line at all. It could be part of the Western Railway operation, but it doesn't have to be.
In fact, I remember seeing a report from around 10 years ago which stated that there was a big concern about this railway reopening because it would cause competition for the buses.
But if we're serious about reducing our carbon emissions, then we need to get back on the rails. And you know, whilst I understand that there were many uneconomic lines that had to close, I still think that the beaching cuts were an enormous act of self-sabotage.
Okay, so this is Llugashall, the end of that military line. In fact, the old station's just down there, the platform, a lot bigger than what we see now, and there's an old military yard just to our north, just there, and about a mile or two in that direction, well, we see Tidworth. In fact, Tidworth used to be a branch from this line and was in fact the busiest station on the line despite its branch status. The army really utilised the railways. So if somehow we did manage to open the station here and across at Tidworth, well, a lot of local people can walk here. But don't forget, these towns are expanding hugely in every direction.
But you know, you can put, as long as the bus links in and there's a car park, I think people absolutely would use it. And you're serving a much greater population in Tidworth as well, which will help justify it even more.
Well, that makes great sense. To a significant car park somewhere between the two, Tidworth and Ludgershall. We've got a huge area of unbuilt industrial land just across the way there, and all of a sudden we have ourselves a parkway status. So I still had a bunch of questions about this. I wanted to speak to someone that had hands-on experience of seeing new lines open and the technology that's available to us. So I caught up with Geoff Marshall. So if I woke up tomorrow and I wanted to build a railway, what's the first thing I'd actually need to do?
The very first thing would be feasibility. You have to get a railway company interested or on board. So around here you're assuming it's South Western Railways, but Great Western are just up the way. They run services to Basingstoke, and you have to prove that it's feasible. So initially a feasibility study to prove that you can run trains down here. However, as trains do already infrequently run down these metals, these exact metals, presumably that has already been done, and it has been proven feasible that trains can run on this track.
Who actually decides whether a line can reopen? Is it the government, Network Rail, the council, or somebody else?
It's a mix. As far as I'm aware, Network Rail owns the track, but the Department of Transport, sets the policy on these things. You can get like local MPs or other lobby groups involved, but really what you need is somebody in the Treasury to say, yes, we can fund this.
So what exactly would we be running up and down here? I assume we're not running a heavy rail like we see on the main lines.
I'm going to be cheeky and refer to my notes because I don't want to miss one. Because the obvious example that I always think of in this instance is the Stourbridge Shuttle Junction, which is the Parry People Mover train that goes up and down. However, last year, 2 years ago, you've got the Class 799 Hydroflex train, so there's a hydrogen train possibility. You also have battery trains. So I've done some stuff with GWR. They have a battery loco. That could be perfect for something like this, just like shuttling up and down. I think GWR would like to do that as well. You could have a hybrid diesel train. Those are diesel engines, but they're supplemented with battery and parts. I'm just checking my list because I want to get it right. I don't want to miss anyone. You've also got light rail. I was recently in Coventry for the very light rail tram system. It's like a bus that's a tram, but it's like a very low cost, much more lower cost than running a regular tram. Anything like this. It doesn't have to be like a big full-on train. There are many options. Personally, for the length of this track, what is it? What's the length?
5-6 miles.
I'm thinking battery. This could be perfect for a battery train.
I had recently spent a day on a heritage railway because for me, whilst I think even if we did form a great team here and Chris spearheads this, I have a concern. What if we're once again met with the usual objections, there's no money left in the pot, or that railway's a better option than this railway, or whatever. So could we in fact consider here a heritage line, perhaps weekends and bank holidays only, and of course the MOD taking precedent over the line in a case of an emergency?
In the late 1940s, after the Second World War, Britain's railways were changing, and they were changing fast. The creation of British Railways itself as a nationalised project in 1948 meant that there was much need for modernisation. There was huge sweeping plans to get rid of steam, to electrify railway lines, and to close thousands and thousands of miles of track. And so gone were the steam trains of people's childhood. Gone were those bucolic, beautiful little stations with a porter and some milk jugs standing waiting at the platform. People wanted to preserve that as much as they possibly could.
Heritage lines are close to the best fun we will have, a bunch of geeks nerding out and remembering the days gone by of dirty diesels or smoking kettles.
So we're here today at the Dean Forest Railway in the Forest of Dean in Gloucestershire, and this railway itself has been here since the early 1800s, even before the age of steam began. But already, even before this line closed, preservation was already on the minds of the people who had a passion for this railway. And the Dean Forest Railway Society was actually formed in 1970 when the line didn't actually close until 1976. And ever since, they've run this beautiful little line through the middle of the gorgeous Forest of Dean.
So could this really work here? And I guess the same question remains, how do we start a heritage railway? We have a yard, space at this end and space at the other.
Do you have to remember that a full-on passenger service is like heavily regulated? There's so much safety involved. You could make it a heritage, but basically the regulations are less. But you'd need you know, it couldn't be all paid for. So you'd need volunteers to run it. There's the thing where, you know, the speed limit I think on heritage lines is that there's a set limit of 25 miles an hour. It would be nice to have it as a heritage line, but you know, it's worth putting in the time and the investment and the money to make it a full proper railway.
So now here in the 21st century there are over 150 heritage railways in the UK, and none of them could run without the incredible army of volunteers that work tirelessly to preserve these railways. There are around 26,000 people working in the heritage railway industry, and of those only about 4,000 are paid employees. So none of this could happen without the passion and the dedication of the wonderful people who help keep our railway heritage alive. They're not just a heritage railway, they're a living museum. They are a chance to look at a snapshot of life that has gone, to understand more about how people lived in the past, and to keep that heritage alive.
We have a hugely valuable resource right here, so let's head back to that advert that Network Rail put on for the yard back at Andover, because their sales pitch states this: ideal for campaign aggregates, flows and other bulk commodity handling such as timber. Now don't get me wrong, I'm all for Network Rail proposing that area there, the yard there on platform 3, for industrial use. That's a great use of the railway and the resources, but let's have a look again at the immediate surroundings of this area. If you're setting up a business that's going to significantly increase the lorry movement in and out of here, the capacity that would fill regular trains and make a viable ongoing business, I don't think the neighbours are going to be overly happy. Network Rail is doing an amazing job, don't get me wrong, this is all good and part of their process is just happening right here. Wonderful, but perhaps if they were speaking to the local community here, all different invested parties here, all perhaps given their ideas and what could be done here and what would work for the community, let's have a deeper conversation with them. I hate it when things come down to politics. I think instead of using a bit of common sense, sometimes we tend to politicise everything and maybe people think they're going to have their cars taken away from them or something like that. This has nothing to do with that. This is really about, for me, cost of things, making things more efficient, and of course think about the future ahead of our own generation for once. If I lived in those small towns rapidly developing and had to commute to London, I would have to take a bus into Andover or drive my car into Andover in an attempt to get a space in this car park.
I'm working very closely with the parish councils, including Ludgershall over the border, to bring them together to get really local input on what they need as communities. You know, so for example, if you went with a tram train, light rail, you could maybe have more stations, you could have more stop. What's going to work for them, what isn't, is to get the local support and them tell us this is what we need, rather than us as a county council saying, oh well, what you need is this. That's the wrong way around. We're doing a lot of work with them so that when the local plans are published, everyone is pulling in the same direction to send a really clear message to the borough council, to the county councils, to say this is something that we need, which is essential. Let your parish council know that you support it. You can always email me, and I'll certainly put it in the dossier of evidence. Absolutely, write to your MPs, and when the local plan then goes out to consultation, tell the for Test Valley, tell the council this is something you think needs to happen. As well, and let's get it on the agenda. My naivety told me we could just rock up here with a business plan and just get things moving. Chris, Geoff and Kate have all given me a little grounding and a fascinating insight into all aspects of this, from the nuts and bolts of starting to the huge array of good stuff happening all around the country, and of course to the amazing wholesomeness of the Heritage Railway.
You need to start a local group or trust, build awareness. I mean, even you could do this, and I mean more than just making a Facebook group. You need to be active in your community, have like a meeting in your community hall or whatever, you know, get people involved, and from small beginnings really can snowball if the idea has legs.
This has been a hugely interesting journey, but perhaps one more so about my lack of understanding about how things work, but also one where I can see a little glimmer of hope. This is just phase 1, but I can see that a lot of people have got passion about this and how it could be done. Not least because it's trains and railways, but because people care about the future. This is a plan that we might not see happen for a generation or maybe even 2, and I love that. I love how we look at a lot of prehistory on this channel and we see monuments that built over generations, for generations ahead. It wasn't just for them there and now. And I feel like we have this here. We have the seeds and the makings of a project which we could be looking at for future generations, not just a short-term gain. To prove our point about the usefulness of heritage railways in the community, we're currently nearly in Wales. We're on the English-Welsh border, close to it. Kate is travelling to Hertfordshire in a minute, right? Literally in a minute, by train, and you're using a heritage railway to do it.
I am. I'm going to start my journey here on the heritage railway, and then that links in at Lydney with the main line, and from there I'll be able to get home.